Hi, everyone. My name is Joris Peels, and this is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, thanks to 3dprint.com. And today we are going to be talking about the Durst Group. So, this is a 2D printing, wide format 2D printing solutions company, Italian firm. And they announced a while ago, a couple of years ago, that they were creating their own spin off, D3AM, which is a microparticle jetting process which could be used. Well, it could be used at the moment. It's going to be used for ceramics, but theoretically, it could also be used for other things like metals and stuff like that as well. Now they've released news that they will be debuting the machine, the D3AM Lab 2, which is a machine made for technical ceramics. They're going to be launching with silicon carbide, which is going to be a great material, of course, for hard applications like end effectors, cutting tools, stuff like that, and also zirconia, which is another technical ceramic that can be used for an awful lot of other stuff as well. These ceramics, technical ceramics, are very hard materials. They're very wear resistant. They often can be used with all sorts of chemicals and are very abrasion resistant, but also resistant to all sorts of chemicals and oils and other sorts of materials as well. This makes them very, very, and obviously they're very, very temperature resistant as well. This makes them actually quite difficult to machine and make, especially into very intricate little shapes. And that means a combination between technical ceramics and 3D printing has been a very exciting one, or a very promising one. And it's always been kind of a promising one. Xjet and Lithos have been working on it for a while now. Xjet has been making progress. There have been other kind of slurry SLA methods that have become more prominent. And then you got it's essentially an SLA process, stereolithography process, vat polymerization process, with a loaded resin that's then sintered after the fact. And then there's, of course, nanoparticle jetting, which is the Xjet process. Now, these companies have been trying to unlock several different technologies leading to technical ceramic parts. And the overlap with 3D printing is beautiful because you get a very intricately designed part that's made at a certain time with a certain geometry that is this very hard material that's very temperature resistant, abrasion resistant. It's beautiful, but we haven't really been able to fulfill the promise. So maybe these new guys, these Durst guys, the D3AM people, will bring some much needed competition to expand that market. They at least believe that they can overcome some of the technical difficulties of the slurry SLM people. It maybe even make bigger size tools, maybe even make different wall thicknesses that is difficult or impossible to do with some of these slurry SLA processes. So that's interesting. I would like to see this get much, much bigger than it is. I think there's so much potential here, and yeah, they're showcasing the machine at Forum Next. I'm sure a lot of people are going to show a lot of interest there. So this is wonderful. The next thing is it's a kid's 3D printing application. Sorry, I don't have a picture because it's from a newspaper. The news came from the Des Moines Register, so we couldn't use the image. But I think it's a wonderful story. It's about Ankeny, Prairie, Ankeny, a place called Ankeny, and it's the Prairie Ridge Middle School. And their kids have gotten $7,500 to get 3D printers and also a laser cutter. And they're seventh graders, and they're working for all sorts of making all sorts of stuff. Now, they're making all the usual stuff, like they're making coasters, which is a very obvious thing with laser cutting, of course. They're making some molds for clay project, which is like, that's something I wouldn't have imagined was the first thing they'd make. But what I really specifically love about this is what they're going to do with these kids is they're going to let them make maracas. Those little sound making things, and it might seem a bit of a facetious, kind of silly, stupid thing to do. But what they're going to do is make maracas specifically meant for special needs kids. So the idea is to give special needs kids an instrument they can manipulate much easier than they're able to do now. I love this idea because a lot of times, like a lot of stuff in school is very fake. Just making it up. You're pretending, right? Or it's very abstract. And here, these kids are going to be using this technology to make a real object. A real object that one of their classmates or somebody in another class is going to handle. So a real object that has to work, right? It has to kind of stay whole. It has to stay intact. It has to be able to be dropped on the floor, that kind of thing. So I love this idea of using 3D printing to make real objects that are really going to be playing a significant part in people's lives. And I think that's missing from a lot of education now. A lot of education is boring because it's like two guys meeting each other on a train. What? Who cares, right? But making actual objects, right, that have an actual purpose, and the demands of having an actual customer, if you will, I think is an absolutely beautiful thing. I think this is a wonderful project. Students helping students and students learning 3D printing, and then also learning that it can affect change in the real world. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The next news is also something interesting. I think it's from LUMO AM. It's a service bureau in Germany, and they're working with E+. So there already is the first interesting thing about this. Everybody's speculating at the moment. What is the market penetration of these Chinese vendors in Europe going to be like? Is everyone going to use them because it's just, hey, it's a commodity machine, it's cheaper, or is no one going to use them because they're fearful of this U.S. China kind of trade and intelligence war stuff? Now, we're pretty sure, and I think everyone else with us, that people in aerospace, very sensitive industries, are going to be very wary of using Chinese machines. But what if you're not in an industry where things are not as sensitive? What if it's just construction equipment and stuff that's quite fairly commoditized? Now, we don't usually think of that as a good business case for 3D printing, but it could be. Now, first off, this is a prototype, right? So it's not an actual real product at the moment. But what LUMO AM and E+ have done is make use a 100 by 100 by 400 millimeter build volume printer to instain the seal, make these components for they're used to keep gas at a constant temperature and constant pressure, and they're using chillers, they're used in jackhammers and all that kind of thing. And these kind of things are a relatively low cost application, but they do need a specific shape. They need the tolerances do have to be quite tight to make sure that air can flow and stuff like that. And it's being pitched at a very well-defined market: construction chillers or construction jackhammers and stuff like that. And this is an example of this Chinese German cooperation that is not very sensitive, and that may very well grow out to be much bigger. Like, imagine, because they're not allowed to work for aviation, new space, and stuff, these companies focus on things like construction equipment. That can actually end up being a lower margin, less critical maybe, but easier to penetrate, and maybe much bigger application if they get these parts right. So I really, really like that this world beyond aircraft parts, and these screw kind of components are kind of, yeah, that's something that's new for me, at least. I didn't know anyone else that was doing them, and I think that this kind of thing, like this kind of level of component, size of component, is new to us. It's not very cost effective, but if you make powder cheaper and if you make the machines cheaper, well, a lot of this stuff will come into focus at some point. So I thought that was something to look at. Anyway, my name is Joris Peels. This was 3D Printing News Unpeeled. Thanks to 3dprint.com, and I hope you found this insightful or helpful.